Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. I have with me today one of our really strong partners within Shared Practices, someone that I think as a dental practice owner, as often as possible, we want to be able to like shut our brain off. It's like, just tell me who to work with, what to do in this circumstance so that I don't have to make a whole bunch of decisions around things that I'm not an expert in. And so we've brought with us on the show today Jill Hasselmann from HR for Health and a longtime partner of Shared Practices, someone that we work with for all of our clients. We have a relationship with you guys, and it's very few companies that we actually internalize. Here is part of our coaching package. Like, we don't just endorse this provider of some services. It's like, we don't even want to do this. We want to bring someone in, and we want to include this in what we do overall. So Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. And I think that this topic is one that not only do, the doctors want to shut their brain off, but they definitely don't want to think about HR ever unless they absolutely have to. And so I'm excited to be here and hopefully give some tips and tricks to make that a little bit easier, since we know it's not everybody's favorite topic.
It's not, and it's like all the hard things already to then add a layer of bureaucracy and liability. And as a business owner, you can technically do kind of whatever you want,
Yeah.
but there are laws in your state, and there is exposure and risk. And there's nothing worse than letting go of an employee, of having something happen in your office, and you handle it the best you think you can in the moment.
Mhm.
And later on, you look back and you're like, oh, that kind of made things worse. Now I'm getting, filed for unemployment. I've got someone suing me. I've got someone tarnishing my reputation. And all of that can really be mitigated and really be put on a very safe place where you just have confidence that, like, okay, we know what to do, and we're going to do it the right way. We're going to protect ourselves. We're going to do the right thing for team members. Have them have a successful experience joining the practice, onboarding into the practice, resolving those concerns. And then if we have to let someone go, and we have a back end of that relationship, we do that the right way as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
what would you say to all that in terms of,
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that there's two things that are really important to keep in mind when it comes to HR. Like, the first one is the H in HR is human. And so that means, humans are messy and we have needs and we have emotions and we are not always predictable every single day. And so I think having as much foundation and structure in place for when that unpredictability happens is putting yourself in the best foot you can to be able to handle it. And I think the other thing is, I always say, like, compliance is caring. Like, I think that you look at these regulations and these laws as a drag and just something that we have to keep up on, which I get it. I mean, it's really hard. Like, we're in, HR for Health is in all 50 states. So, like, what an individual client is feeling, we're feeling, literally 50 fold on, with every single state and even cities that are doing different things. And so I get it. It's like, does this really matter if I'm doing this? But I think that team members, why HR for Health exists to be this resource for employers specifically is because these types of resources don't exist for employers, but they do for employees at a lot of state levels. And so they know, like, what they are entitled to and what they deserve. And so really I look at compliance as, like, that's the baseline of just treating your employees correctly and, like, with respect and what, again, they deserve. And then you can build things on top of that to really, like, make a great experience. And I think so many people think of HR as well as, it's just when I terminate somebody, that's really what I need to think about. And for a lot of years, like, that might have been true. We had 100% employment in dental for a long time. And even now, like, if you want to work at a dental practice, there's a high likelihood that a dental practice in your area needs somebody like you to work with them. And this can also be a strategy for, like, keeping your employees and keeping them happy, which is making sure that, again, just bare minimum, like, with what is required that you're following so that you're giving them that good experience. And hopefully, if termination has to come into play, like, it's never a surprise because you have that foundation, you're having these conversations and this accountability for the team so that if something starts to go sideways, it's not out of the blue. Like everyone is kind of aware of it as it's like going in that direction.
Perfect. Well, I sometimes I like to think about these things and approach these conversations in the frame of like the anatomy of HR. I think we lump there's a number of things that get lumped together. And if you're in a big company, like all of that might go through the HR department, but there's specialists for all these things. And so I kind of want to try and outline HR for someone who's like, okay, what do I need to even think about in this department?
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm missing things, but I want to just sketch this
Yeah.
overall. Um, so when I think of human resources, one big part of this is the hiring and onboarding process. So
Mhm.
how do we um, bring humans into our practice, into our business?
Yep.
Um, Another part of this is the benefits that are part of being our office. What they are, whether it's dental benefits, the expectations, the time off, the policies that we have in place, so that we have an attractive position for
Yeah.
people to come join our practice, and it's very clear. Um, there's an element of HR that I think of. I don't know if it was Toby from The Office of you
Yeah.
know when people have problems and they need to come talk to someone, there's a grievance or whatever, that is, kind of classified. And usually a dental office doesn't have an HR department. That's the dentist or the office manager and,
Yep.
and the drama in the office. And that is, part of working with people, with humans, is how do we handle conflict? How do we handle disagreements? And, when expectations aren't met, how do we, document, correct, and help people succeed? And then there's the compliance side of things of making sure we're staying on top of all the changes in laws that are state to state, that are federal, that are ongoing. And like none of us are attorneys, none of us are reading the code for, these I can't stay on top of that kind of stuff. Um, and it's super important, and like it's the last thing I want to do as a business owner. And so I think a lot of that comes to a head on the back end of someone leaving the practice.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that's kind of the four areas. Is that Am I missing anything, and do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say that you nailed it. I mean, look, there's a payroll component, of course, in there too that
Hey, I
is
missed it.
you
Payroll is a big deal. The logistics of like actually paying people on a week to week basis.
yes, it's a big logistic and it's a big headache because especially because in dental, like we don't tend to pay our employees a normal, I'm going to say hourly rate. Like there is a percent production component, a percent collection component, maybe a per patient payment, per day payment. And so that's what makes payroll so tough is actually figuring out the correct calculations because like you mentioned, there's time off that's in there. You know, if I pay somebody per patient or per day, how does that correspond to the number of days they get off out of the office or what is the overtime that I'm supposed to calculate for those people? And so that's where we find like a lot of doctors struggle and where why wage and hour claims are one of the most common, if not the most common, and have been on the rise. I think that's like we're at like 450% increase at this point from the last 20 years of where wage and hour claims are at because they're so easy to file. You know, an
Mm,
employee can be employed by the office and file these. And what these claims are is basically an employee saying, I'm not being paid correctly. So whether that's overtime isn't in my paycheck or just the hours aren't calculated correctly or I'm using a time clock that forces them to clock in and out at certain times, and employees sitting there going, I'm being forced to work off the clock, you know, because I'm not able to clock in with these time clocks. And so there's a lot of systems that do go into play for that. But what we found is that from a payroll perspective, it's not actually like processing the payroll that's a headache, it's the calculation of
and
what is
keeping track.
supposed
I
to.
mean, month to month, week to week, year to year,
Yep.
multi-year employees and how benefits roll over.
Yeah.
And that's like it can mean a lot to people of feeling like I'm appreciated and I haven't taken a lot of time off and it's accrued and I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to
Yeah.
this. But then when it goes sour, when there's like a disagreement, that right there is a big potential loss of goodwill if we mishandle it. Just out of even if we're not trying to cause problems or drama, it's just like I just can't remember, and the details are foggy, and we look back and was this a sick day? Was this a vacation day?
Yeah.
Was this a kind of one-off circumstance? And did we even document this so that we've got a paper trail later on?
That is, I mean, you're speaking like right into my soul of like what our clients struggle with is literally year over year. That is the most, and still today, most common question that we get when we start working with a client is, or the most confusion is around time off policies. Like the confusion around what does it mean if I have a vacation policy that's based on calendar year versus anniversary year. Like, for example, we recommend that you do it based on anniversary year. It's much easier from a, like, look, calendar year is great for everybody that's there January 1st. But when you hire somebody in March or in June, it gets really confusing for that new employee of, well, how is this prorated? How does this work for me when I come in mid year? But on the flip side, what a lot of our clients tell us before they start working with us is, well, it's really hard for me to track. I 10 employees to figure out where they're all at within their anniversaries. And then knowing when they're supposed to request time, it gets really confusing. And so, when again, the most common thing we see when we start working with a client is there's one thing in writing of this is what my policies say I do, but then they're doing something completely different. And also, like practices might leverage vacation or sick time to entice somebody to come into the office. They might be a really high ticket item employee that's like, I really need this person. They have a lot of experience in this specialty. I'm trying to roll out. I'm going to leverage a little bit more vacation for this person. And then we just threw in another dynamic, which again, it's okay to do that as long as it's fair and, all those things. But it just gets very confusing for them from a tracking perspective. And so the I don't expect every single doctor listening to know every policy that's written in their handbook. That's our job, like for the clients, really. But that is a tip I would absolutely give. Like, if you don't understand your vacation and sick time policies, your team definitely doesn't understand. And that's where confusion happens. That's where risk happens. But I think, again, from your point, Richard, that's like where trust is lost very easily from team members. Like, team members want to see that their paycheck is exactly what they expect when they get that paycheck, and that they know, like, okay, if I have this vacation coming up, I know what to expect. I know that the office is closed for 3 weeks in July and I have to use some vacation hours for that, but I'm still saving some up for December, whatever it might be, and that they know that they're in accordance with your policies. So when they do go to request time off, it's not like even more stressful than just taking the vacation in the first place, where they're already like, do I have time to do this? Should I be doing this? And a lot of that is leading to burnout, which is an issue.
It's funny because I thought of a potential title for this episode, which compliance wise, I don't know if you guys will like this because it might be too bold of a claim. But I mean, the idea is this is where we want people to be: is never worry about HR again.
Yes.
Um,
That is actually our mission statement so we have a technology, a platform that's really the bread and butter of what we do, is this software that is built specifically for a dental practice to be able to run their HR. And that is literally our internal mission and vision statement for our software, which is HR, or a software that's so easy that somebody who does not know how to do HR can do HR in our system. I mean, that's really what our goal is, because we know that it's really hard and we want to make it as easy as possible. And it is a very complex, to your point, lots of prongs that kind of go into this that shape up all of this HR. And so we want it to be as easy as somebody to be able to digest. And again, that team to like have transparency into their employment is, I think, really underrated and I think overlooked. When our employees that we're bringing into the office now are millennials, and dare I say it, Gen Z. I'm a millennial. I used to lie about being a millennial like 5 years ago when I would lecture because everyone hated millennials. And now the heat's off us and it's all about the Gen Zers. But, they expect like a certain type of experience as consumers. We are all getting a certain type of experience, which is transparency, it's visibility. It's, I know exactly where my package is when it is 5 blocks away. I can track that driver coming in. And so when you switch that and they go into a work setting and they are requesting time off on a piece of paper, or they're getting a physical printed out binder of a handbook that hasn't been updated in 7 years, or with all these random addendums, like that is a big shift in what they're used to just from an experience with the outside world. And so, yeah, I think
I have an example of this that
tell
comes
me.
to mind. Um, I think about that maybe practice owners will relate to. One of the frustrating parts is a lot of times when we get a practice loan from like a local bank. Like I had to get was it an SBA loan or I can't remember the type of loan I had to get right at the moment. But I went with a bank that wasn't like Chase Bank or one of the
Mhm.
big dental lenders. And they want you to do your regular checking and savings banking with them. And they want to bundle in all these services.
Yeah.
And one of the most frustrating parts is as a personal consumer, you get used to a banking app. Like I've got Chase Bank that just does everything. It's seamless. I never have to worry about it. It's really easy to find things. It's just
Yeah.
easy to access from mobile. And then you go work with like a local regional bank, and their website for business owners is so awful.
Yeah.
And we're just spoiled by
Yeah.
technology that
You can't go
works.
back. You can't go back once you have it. Like, it's something that it's just and again, it's something that we internally, like, realize that we'll release a feature that is, like, a groundbreaking feature, and within, like, a month, we already have clients asking us for, like, more things within that feature. Like, when you get used to doing something with a couple clicks, it changes the game, and it's like, it needs to have both. Like, you want that experience of that local lender that is going to give you that like one-on-one experience, that like really, great experience. But then also when I'm not with you one-on-one, I want to be able to access whatever I need without you like quickly.
Right. So I want to go back to these. Okay, we identified 5 areas. We
Yeah.
talked about hiring, onboarding. We talked about you brought up payroll.
Hmm.
We talked about the actual like drama HR that
Yeah.
all the TV shows kind of joke about.
Hmm.
We talked about benefits, so like health insurance,
401k,
retirement
time off.
stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly, all of that and tracking all of that. Some of that's related to payroll, and then lastly, compliance and kind of protecting ourselves, on the back end, and so with all of those, like, now that someone is listening to this, they might say, like, "Okay, I'm good on these ones, or at least I'm decent. These don't stress me out that much. But these other ones are more stressful." I do wanna come to, like, exactly what you guys do for our shared practices clients,
Hmm.
kind of baked into their coaching, because I think that will like help people see the highest yield stuff. We've kind of cherry picked
Yeah.
like what is the stuff that we don't even want to do as a coaching company because it is both tedious on one end and
Hmm.
really important to get right. So do you
Yeah.
mind kind of starting there for the audience so they can like wrap their mind around, okay, if I were to implement some help,
Hmm.
maybe I could start with this area.
Yeah. Yes. And before I answer that, I'll kind of take a step back to even explain like why is HR for Health here. So we were created by our co-founder, our CEO is an employment attorney that just works with dental healthcare professionals. So his wife's a dentist. He created HR for Health as a preventative way for to try to decrease the issues that are coming to his law firm from employee employer related things. And
Mm,
so that is again, wage and hour claim is a big part of that. But but a lot of it was, making employment decisions that maybe between the doctor and the employee was really obvious. They both knew something was going on, but there was no documentation.
yeah.
And so a decision was made, and then that turned into a harassment claim, a retaliatory claim, those larger sort of claims. And so our goal daily is to reduce that risk profile we call with for our clients. We want to have them if a claim happens, like we want to prevent a claim, but of course, we aren't magicians. Things do still happen, and if something does happen, that claim is significantly reduced or goes away really easy. And so one of the big pillars of that is the employee handbook. We have when our CEO does still, have claims and he talks to the attorney that is bringing this claim against a doctor is like, why are you doing this? It's like, well, if they don't have an employee handbook, which is like the most basic part of HR, the first thing that you need, or maybe they do have a handbook, but it hasn't been updated in 2-3 years. What else don't they have? And so that's really what we put together for shared practices clients, specifically if you're a coaching client, which is shared practices is covering the cost for us to do an employee handbook for every single client. So these handbooks are customized for federal, of course, state, local laws, but then also for the practice. So we want to make sure that this represents really how the practice is functioning. Again, what's written, we want to make sure is being followed. And then as laws change, our system's automatically updating those policies. So that's kind of the first starting point. And then we also pair that with the bucket that you identified, which is we call it the therapy bucket, which is my employee came in drunk today. I just found, I mean, we hear it all. Like I just found out my employee was a drug dealer on the side. And that's like why, she was calling out every day on the same day every week. My employee was in jail, so they couldn't show up to work, but I really like them. Should I fire them? All those things or it could just be something like, hey, I want to do a working interview. I know these are kind of tricky, some gray area there. How do I make sure I'm doing that correctly? So that's really access to our HR team, which is they can call, get questions answered. So again, that's something that's just specific for shared practices coaching clients. And that's kind of carved out of our typical services that we would work with somebody directly on. Those two components are included in like our general services. But again, we've carved those out specifically for shared practices clients.
Cool. Well, so I think that's a great starting point in that I want to talk about those two.
Yeah.
You talked about the employee manual.
Mhm.
Um, and the first thing that came to mind was, okay, I got to be federally compliant. I got to be state compliant. There's also a part of me that's just like, what's everyone else doing? Like, and this is
Totally.
the level of like coaching with a coach is like,
Yeah.
okay, what's everyone else doing, and how do I strategically position myself as a business owner to both be attractive but also be clear
Yeah.
and scale appropriately. So there's like multiple layers of just like, how do we do this? How do we
Yeah.
handle these things? What are the policies both protect me on the federal state level, but also like
What's
what
normal? Like,
should I
what's
do?
everyone else doing? Yeah, and and I love that you said that. That's something that we have built into our handbook process, which is clients actually see. So there's a couple of things. First of all, it's every question that we're asking to try to build this handbook, and this is all digital. This is like self-serve. They, can do this on off hours because we know the person that is doing it is typically the owner, the one that's running the business, has a million other things going on. And so they see for each question, it says, what does this mean? So when we're asking them a question, there's a little box that they can, click on that will open up way more information of what is this question about? Why are we asking you this? Why is it important? And then we also have in each question a little badge next to it that says, this is what HR for Health recommends. And that badge is based on either just best practice, but a lot of it is what we hear from clients when we're talking with them. What's normal for them in terms of sick leave offering? That's what we get asked a lot. Like, what's competitive from sick time? What's competitive from vacation time? What's competitive from that perspective? And so we, again, are kind of holding their hand of not just like, what does this mean? How is it going to impact the practice, but then also what we're recommending. And that's why when people say like, because this is the most common thing actually, is we do surveys and research of this industry of like, okay, where are they getting this stuff? Kind of what's the baseline? Because we get asked a lot, like, will you review our handbook? And our team, as we've tried that, is like, we don't know where you got, like, who wrote this? Is typically like what when we're reviewing it. And so, based on like surveys and things that data that we've gathered, the most common way somebody is getting their employee handbook is from a colleague or a friend, and then editing it to fit their practice's needs. And so that aspect of like, well, we don't know if what your friend or your colleague did in the first place was compliant or best for their practice, but then you're trying to figure out how to incorporate it into your practice. It's too much time, it's too much energy, and we don't even know if the ending product is updated, compliant, best for the individual practice. And so that's a big reason why we've worked with shared practices to kind of carve this out. So like that guesswork and that whole like I got again, it like gives me anxiety when I think about that. And like these Facebook groups of like people asking each other questions that, don't know the answers each other, and then they're running with that. The handbook is like a big part of that. And so again, we want to make it as easy as possible so that people are not inclined to get it from their friend or a colleague and then make it what they think. Like those templates can really be a downside, like what, because it's not just enough to have it. Like it needs to be something you're actually following and doing. It doesn't matter if it's in writing and you're doing something totally different. it's very easy to like poke holes in that, from an employee perspective or heaven forbid from, a claim perspective.
Um, it's funny because the thing that comes to mind right now is, you talked about studies. Where are people getting these?
Mm.
The new version of this, we just did an episode where we talked about an operations manual, which is very different than an employee manual.
Yep.
We talked about ChatGPT and how useful that can be.
Yeah.
But it's also a liability. Like just today, I gave ChatGPT an image and asked it to pull a bunch of numbers from that image, and it
Hmm.
straight up got things wrong on that simple task. I had to like call it out, like, "Hey, go back and check your work. Like, you didn't even get this number right."
Yeah.
And it's right there on the image. And to then have it give you recommendations on a complex document, because I think there's people who are like, "Oh yeah, I'll just have ChatGPT do that."
Yeah.
Um, you are putting yourself at such liability and risk because it's not an attorney. It doesn't, even though it can like pull up stuff for your state and federal,
Yeah.
it misses. It gets stuff wrong. And you go back to what you said earlier about the most common claims from team members and how you're working on kind of preventing those from happening, but also um, being a super well documented prepared in case they do.
Mhm.
ChatGPT also puts us at risk because now it's easier than ever for team members to say like, "Hey, this happened to me. I'm
Yeah.
in this state. I'm in, what can I do? What are my resources? What are my recourses? Can I take this person to court? Can I, XYZ?"
Yeah.
And so some people might think like, "Oh, I got this. I'll just do it on my
Yeah.
own." And it's the other way around. This should make you like even more careful about compliance. And so going back to what you just said with the little pop-up bubbles that like explain
Mhm.
what this means.
Yeah.
I remember being at a conference, and it was talking about associates hiring other
Mhm.
doctors. And one of the people at the conference lecturing said that when he does a contract for another doctor, he actually has not only all the legalese, but he also has comments on the side of it of like, what does this actually mean? Uh,
Mhm.
interprets it. So the fact that you
Yeah.
guys do that for the dentist filling this out is amazing. And my question is, how long does it take for a doctor to go through the process that you guys have built and actually use your tools to build an HR manual? Because in my mind, like I look at, I don't know how many pages these are, whether it's 30, 50, 80 page
Yeah.
document, and I like die inside. I
Yeah.
hate writing.
Yeah.
I hate making a bunch of little decisions. So, what does that realistically look like?
Yeah. So it is, first of all, like we don't ask a question in the process if we don't absolutely need to know an answer to it. So, for example, like no client has a choice over what their overtime policy is. Like, we're not asking, like, do you want an overtime policy or, do you want to say you don't pay overtime? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the policy is written how it's written. We don't have a choice over that. So we're decreasing, like, it's not like every single policy has a corresponding question
Right.
in that perspective. If somebody knows the answers to the question, so again, that's kind of when we start working with a client, they'll be like, "Yeah, I've got this. Like, I know, all the I just want to get everything automated. I want to get it digital, but I know my policies like the back of my hand." Again, we find that when we're starting to ask them questions of like, "What's your uniform? Do you want to have a uniform policy? Do you have a fragrance policy?" Like things they haven't necessarily thought of. They have to maybe take a beat and go, "Oh, wait, what does this mean? Again, what does this mean for me?" and read through that. I would say on average, like to complete the questionnaire for, let's say, half the policies, maybe half you're not really sure of what you're currently doing in the office, maybe 1 to 2 hours, like max. And then once that questionnaire is done, we're formulating the handbook with like a click of the button and then it's just updated from there. So the way that we do the handbook process has significantly reduced the amount of time the client has to spend doing it. And we've actually heard like some companies that maybe all they do are handbooks or haven't like built in an automation aspect of this. Like they'll say like, well, your handbook process is going to take 6 months, but that's because like we're going to really customize it. I'm not really buying that excuse. I think it can be much quicker. Our client from the time of starting with us, I would say about 2 weeks for them to actually have their handbook done and distributed to the team and signed is average what we see. But again, some of them, like a startup practice that's like ready to make decisions, doesn't have any like existing baggage they have to worry about, can be way quicker than that.
Well, that's awesome. And, to think about, like, for me, I'm like, oh, I'm dreading like a 4 hour process that I have to like carve time out on a day off. But if it's like 1 to 2 hours, it's like just in
Way.
two lunch breaks, maybe split
Yep.
it over three lunch breaks over the course of the week. And you're just done with
Yeah.
this for a long, long time. And it's as streamlined as possible. And then you can actually roll it out, share it with the team, go over it. And when we talk about like core values, you
Hmm.
want this to be a collaborative process. You want buy-in from the team and you have team meetings about this. When it comes to this kind of stuff, this is not a democracy. We're not voting on what are the office policies.
Right.
And so like really the decision needs to be made. And once the
Yep.
decision's made and the policy is in the books, we got to share and communicate, train on it, remind people of it, enforce it. But this is not like a we need to get everyone's input.
Yes.
And like that is the reality of it. And so to have just such a quick process to go through and easily create this is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I will say so I've been with HR for Health for almost 12 years, and I've had a lot of different hats I've worn internally. And so I think I resonate a lot with our clients in terms of like, I've sold our product, I have led partnerships for our product, but like one of the most kind of, I guess, unique or out of my typical skill set was our operations manager. We did not have one at the time. I kind of
Mm.
switched internally for a couple of years to like rebuild our team, focus on culture, really get, strong foundation for the growth like that we were having. We just kind of outgrew ourselves. And I never realized what HR for Health was doing truly until I was in the operations manager role because I was friends with all of these people. And overnight, I was basically everyone's bosses in the company. And like the employee handbook and these objective things that I had in writing for my expectations were my best friend because it was no longer emotional. It was just like, look, these are the company's decisions of how we're doing things. And it gave us like a starting point to be able to have non emotional conversations and like that kind of true north of what everyone was supposed to be doing. And that's, I think, like where missteps happen is we look at write ups or documenting things or referencing our handbook as a bad thing or, I'm holding somebody accountable and that's scary. And this is the only time I'm using it. But really, it should be that true north day to day. Like, it should, if our employee handbooks say we do performance reviews twice a year, do the performance reviews twice a year. And it doesn't need to be like, oh no, I'm getting a performance review. It's like, well, this is what the policy said. And I'm walking my walk of what I say, I have in writing. And if it just doesn't work, then we change what's in writing. Like there's a lot of flexibility there. Again, I think the biggest downfall is you are putting something in writing and putting all this emphasis on reviewing it with the team. And that's the other thing is another little tip and trick. Pick out the couple things that annoy you the most. Like, is it cell phone use? Is it tardiness? Is it, talking to each other when a patient walks in the office? Like, whatever it might be, and highlight those things in when you're doing this update with the handbook of you're not reading the entire thing together, but you're saying, hey guys, make sure you look at the overtime policy. We have some updates there. Or really review our meal and rest break policy because we've been having issues with everyone clocking out for lunches and breaks. I'm going to give everybody 2 weeks to be able to get, with the new curve. And then we're going to start to have different conversations. Like it just puts you in a better position as opposed to just like stewing over this when you see it's happening. Or what happens is you go to run payroll every 2 weeks and that's where you realize that all these issues are happening, but they've like piled up and then you just have to run payroll and then you move on to the next thing without addressing it like in real time.
I love that we talk about the drama and the like holding people accountable and addressing all these issues. Um Doing this process and having so many things just kind of come down from like, hey, actually, this is just what you need to do for compliance. But
Mhm.
then number two, there's this external authority saying like, this is just what people do. These are the policies that are best practices in any
Right.
dental office. There is kind of this like, you get to abdicate a little bit as a practice owner and say like,
Totally.
hey, this
It
is
is what
just
it
what
is.
we've been told
Yep.
is the way to operate in the best way possible. And we're just following this policy and this manual rather than every crisis falls on you to make an emotional decision based on
Like,
judging the circumstances. And so I think, you talked about, and this is the other half of what you do for our clients, which is supporting these moments. So many of those moments get cut down just by having this in place, referencing it, making it not emotional, and
yep.
just sticking to the books. And it's just nice to like point the finger, and as an
Really,
owner, and not have to like be the bad guy for once.
I mean, and we do this a lot, right? Like, again, I have, I think, 7 people that report to me directly still. Like, we are HR and we also have internal HR. And I have employees that it would take a lot for me to fire them, like a lot. Like, they've been here for a long time, but like I'm still writing them up. Like, it's just that consistency of like, look, you went outside the bounds of our policy. It's not the end of the world. I know you're going to change your behavior, but I'm going to document this because we have to. Like, I just have to stay consistent because if I'm not, I'm teaching you as your leader that you don't know what to expect from me. And that's like the last thing I want because then people get afraid to do things. They get afraid to bring things up, talk to me about things, whatever it might be. And so it really is that like true crutch of, if you want to look at it that way, of like, yeah, this just helps me be a better leader for you and be consistent for everyone around me. I'm not picking and choosing based on who I like. If they're going outside the bounds of my policy, it is what it is.
100%. And taking the actually one thing you said with performance reviews. My one little like tip here logistically is whenever you do your performance reviews, schedule the next ones and put them on the calendar.
Yep.
Because otherwise like 6 months passes or how many months passes.
Or
So
if
that was
you're a client, we tell you when it's time to do a review. And, like, we put it in your face. We give you like the templates to do it. Again, like it's all done through our system. But yes, that is something like we have a lot of structure internally. And again, for our awareness when it's somebody's anniversary. We have a process of when it's somebody's anniversary. We're doing that performance review. We're using their job description to help us with the way that we do the performance review, like all, that's within HR for help. But yeah, great tip. Like that's the worst thing is you get momentum around this whole reflective conversation and like what's been going good and what's being worked on. And then you just don't talk about it again for like 3 years.
right.
It loses all momentum.
Right, 100%. Well, okay, so we're running out of time here because I didn't expect us to just like
Yeah.
there's just so much to dive into. Um, Tell us a little bit more about, that crisis moment and how you help our clients,
Yeah.
and then just briefly talk about the rest of like all the other things and options that you guys have, if you
Yeah.
can.
Yes. And I want to tie back into like your question with ChatGPT as well, or your observation about ChatGPT, which does tie into our HR advising team. So again, we have this platform that we've built that we continue to build. And then we pair this software with humans, with our HR team. And their job is kind of threefold. So one is we have segments of the team that their entire job is to be focusing on what's changing, what laws are changing, what's coming up, what do our clients need to know about those laws, what policies change because of that. The other thing that doesn't get talked about a lot is mostly when laws change, yes, an employee handbook policy has to be changed or a new one gets introduced, but also those onboarding documents that we give to the team also change, and those are typically overlooked. So on average, there's 12 to 15 new hire documents that each employee should be getting on their first day. Again, this depends where you are. New York, California, like we're pushing like 25 documents right now. So, that's average, but what we typically see is about 3 to 4 when we first start working with a client. So like there is a significant kind of deficit there in terms of compliance, but that's what our HR team focuses on is what laws are changing and what needs to change in our system, what needs to change in our offerings, and what do our clients need to know about that. The second thing is employee handbooks. So we do actually help, like if somebody has a question on their employee handbook, for a lot of group practices, like if they're going into a new state or they're acquiring a practice that's going to kind of like throw off their policies, our team like absolutely steps in to help. Or like a startup doctor, not sure at all, like what's normal, what is an employee handbook, like they will actually work through that with them. And then the third piece is again kind of that therapy aspect. So they really are they're there through tickets, through phone calls, emails, whatever, of somebody saying, "Hey, this is a situation with my employee." So that can range from good to bad. I want to give a raise. I want to do a working interview. I'm hiring. How do I make sure I'm classifying people correctly, that I'm not putting somebody as an independent contractor when they're supposed to be an employee, and then all the way to like termination. A lot of internal disputes. And again, this is where we see like rises in trends on things where we'll see like high trends in employee to employee like disputes. And so we'll then put more resources and like be more proactive for our clients around that. Right now, we're seeing like we always get tons of questions around holiday parties. What do I pay my employees
Mhm.
for in terms of holiday parties? What if somebody gets too drunk at the holiday parties? What can I give in terms of presents, year-end bonuses? So like that's a lot of the content that we're doing right now. But yeah, that's really our job, is to just, and we want that. Like our biggest thing is we want somebody to call us prior to making a decision or prior to doing something. Can we help them afterwards? Sure. But again, then we're in a reactive position. So there are times where like our clients will call, they want to fire somebody. We look into that employee's file in HR for Health. We see there's no documentation. And we're like, hey, this is pretty risky. Let's put a plan in place to make sure like you have the documentation that you need. And that kind of segues into what we do full service. So we're really everything from hiring all the way to firing. So those onboarding documents I talked about, those are automatically sent to an employee. They're filled out electronically, signed electronically, the handbook, job descriptions, timekeeping that again is built for a dental practice, time off tracking. We actually take exactly what's written in the handbook and set that up in the system. So there is no discrepancy. What somebody says they get for vacation is exactly what's reflected in there. Performance reviews, violations, write-ups, CE and certification tracking, employee scheduling is a really big piece. So they can see like if they have conflicts, if they have open shifts, an employee can see their entire schedule right there. Um, if they clock in early, if they clock in late, if they don't clock in at all. Like we're running so much stuff in the background to like keep tabs on, based on all these rules they've kind of set out, that they're actually like being followed. And then again, an employee has full access. Like the employee can see the handbook whenever they want. They get summoned for jury duty. They don't have to ask the office manager what to do. They just follow the process that's in there and put the request in HR for Health and put the documentation in there for them. So yeah, that's kind of the full circle.
Cool.
Payroll, of course, we do that too. 401k, health insurance, like a lot of what we've talked about on this podcast. But yeah, ultimately, like I think what we want to do is be that like forefront, like be that proactive thought. Pregnancy leave is also like a lot of employee leaves are on uptick. That needs to be handled right from the beginning. It's really tough to handle those situations when you're in a reactive standpoint, of like not getting the right documentation, not having the right conversations to make sure we're setting everybody up so that this person comes back. And again, that kind of again circles back to the final point of ChatGPT. I think the biggest thing, look, like we're using AI internally, but like we're teaching the AI. Like we, our HR advisors are teaching AI so that if a client doesn't want to talk to a team member, it's like they are talking to our team member through AI. But you have to know exactly what to ask the AI to get the right answers. Like, and I can't stress that enough. Like when a client calls our HR team to fire somebody, we are asking like 10 follow-up questions before we're even getting to a point of where we're advising. Like we're
Mm.
looking at, yes, where they're located, but also like how many employees do you have in total? Because like depending on your state, if you have 5 employees versus 10 employees, different policies apply to you, different laws apply to you. Like how long has that employee been with you? What's the background of like other situations that have happened that have led up to this situation? So there's just so much that goes into it that like if you don't know how you're asking those questions right, it can be really, really bad. So yeah, again, the Facebook groups, the ChatGPT, like please just don't, again, and through shared practices, you have that free resource. You can call us and
Right.
talk to an HR advisor. So there's really like no excuse. And again, like as we're working on our own internal HR or internal AI, this is like years of us teaching. So it's literally like they're talking to an HR advisor that knows what follow-up questions to ask, that knows like exactly how to advise somebody, and also knows when to say, actually, you cannot be talking to AI about this. You need to talk to a human, and I'm scheduling a call for you, because
Right.
there are things you have to be able to talk through. So that's my TED
I
talk
love
about
it.
the AI in HR.
I love it. No, and it is the appropriate wielding of AI is the determination of companies that will be successful moving forward and not. And in
Yep.
dentistry, we need to to do this right. And this is one of these times where you guys have built it. It's amazing. So we're running out of time. I want the
Yeah.
last thing. If someone's interested in learning more about HR for health, where do they go? What's the website?
Can we put in the show notes? So we have a dedicated shared practices landing page, which is
Okay.
hrhealth.com/shared practices. But we can put that link in there so people can get to that. And that's where we put a lot of different resources. I know like we're coming up to end of year. We do this law updates webinar, which again this is free regardless if you're a shared practices client or not, where we are talking through what laws are changing, what to do with those. So those are things that we like also host on the landing page. So it's easy access to be able to get to that. But that's really the best way to get in contact with our team. Holly at Shared Practice is also great. Like if you have questions about HR for Health, we have a direct line to her. So yeah, we're just here to help. Again, I think that's my parting words is like, just if you're ever not sure, which I think is in most cases with HR situations, like just call us. It doesn't hurt. Like we'll give you the advice and maybe it's not as bad as you think, or maybe it was something that could turn into something bigger that you didn't even realize. So again, we want to be this like proactive resource, whether you're a client of ours or not. Because selfishly, if you do become a client, it makes it easier for us to like help with cleanup if you are doing things correctly. So
Love it. Like I said, the goal here, and you said it internally, the goal is never worry about HR again
yes.
because you know what to do and where to go. You've got the support. Thank you so much, Holly, for coming out. Jill, oh my goodness, Jill. Jill, you
So
just said Holly's name,
together.
so Holly's awesome. So that's a
Yeah,
compliment.
she is. I
Thank
will
you so
totally
much,
be
Jill,
right
for
there.
coming on, and really appreciate your time. And hopefully, people will reach out. And if someone is interested, they should be. They should listen to that webinar on the updates from the laws. So, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Richard, for having me. It was a blast. I'm excited to be here again.
Awesome. We'll talk to you next time on the Shared Practices podcast.